Hello and welcome to a little recap on some of the key themes that have emerged from our two webinars that we've run so far here at Curated Conversations, which have been led by my dear friend and colleague, Mel. So Mel, could you just give us a quick sort of overview of what we've covered so far?
Tim, good morning. Thank you for that warm welcome. And I'm glad to hear that I'm a dear friend. um, the last two webinars have really inspired me in terms of the conversations we've been able to curate with our community. And I think some of the, real big nuggets and key takeaways from the last session was we talked about what's at the heart of connection, because obviously the first one was really focused on connection and looking at it holistically right across the organisation and the different components. But then in the last session, we focused on the heart of it. And we got down to trust and how important trust is, and how it is the glue that holds it all together. But the real exciting part of that particular conversation was when we went into the board and we started coming up with all of these thoughts around it. And we got to that one point where, I don't know if you remember, but we landed on good intentions. And how important good intentions were in being at the heart of trust and also purpose, which is what we're going to talk about in our next webinar. What did you think?
I mean, I absolutely recall that. I think what's been most rewarding and exciting about these first two sessions has been the liveliness of the debate and the contribution from the, it's a wide range of leadership, experiences, but ultimately everybody comes together around that campfire experience. And then we get into this very sort of practical, reflective, but also applicable sort of brainstorming and action planning phase, where the communities absolutely come together and brought out these really sort of poignant, sort of reflections. So, is it having an intention of an alignment of intention that actually brings a group together above everything else? And the specific semantic definition of, well, they need to be good intentions. We did immediately debate, well, your good intentions might be somebody else's different intentions. So it's really all down to that alignment and how do you communicate that? How do you build the trust around it consistently? And then, as we will absolutely explore, how do you anchor it around purpose and values and meaning and all of those things?
Yeah. And let me just add as well, I got quite excited when the community was quite engaged in the concept of, what sits behind the neuroscience of trust and some practical tips we could take away and put into play with our teams. And we started to talk about, what do we upregulate versus what we downregulate, and how do we prime for trust so that we're going into these conversations partnering with people as opposed to, that kind of wait and see mode. So I loved how we talked about that neuroscience element as well, not just the typical components of trust that most others talk about on a day-by-day basis.
Oh, for sure. And that the good thing for me about that upregulate, downregulate, sort of language trigger, sort of element was it was so immediately applicable. It's very pragmatic. Yes, it's based on really deep empirical data, but ultimately it was as simple as do more of this and do less of that. So it's right down to that sort of very actionable behavioral change modality that we talk about so much in our work. And that was a handout takeaway, for everyone in the community to go out straight away and start working on this with their own teams.
And they all said how much value there was in receiving that.
Absolutely.
I think as well, for me, it's the language. When we talk about what we up and down regulate, it's really recognizing that as humans, we're not going to immediately go, right, I've recognized that that's a behavior that's not serving me well, let's stop. We're recognizing that it's not that easy. So why don't we do a little bit more of this and a little bit more of that? And over the time, we'll transition that behavior to something that does serve us well.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So, that connection from a team, a leader, an organizational, a purpose, and a community perspective is what we talked about in the first webinar. And then we really dug deep into not just how trust is at the center of connection, but we dug deep into some practical elements on the neuroscience of trust. More importantly, we're coming up to one of my favorite topics, which you're going to be leading in the next 2 webinars, which is on purpose. So I'm looking forward to that on the 20th of November at 12:30 p.m. Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane time, 12 p.m. Adelaide time.
Yeah, so we're going to be looking at the next 2 webinars focusing on purpose. First of all, what is purpose? What's the sort of the division between personal and organizational purpose? Basically, what's the benefit to purpose from an organizational and a leadership perspective? That's all going to be wrapped up within the research, of which there is now a torrent of why purpose is for now. And that's all in the first episode, as it were. And then the second one, we're really going to move into purposeful leadership. How does this specifically play out? How do you show up as a purposeful leader? And then these behavioral anchors that you can, again, apply pragmatically and actionably to progressively shift your behavior either towards fully evolving as a purposeful leader or moving into that mode and then actualizing it over time.
So that's the 20th of November, 12:30 p.m. Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane time. The link will be available in this post, but if not, go to Eventbrite to register and join us. We look forward to seeing our curated community then.